This group of amendments has sort of morphed a little bit and strayed. Originally, when the bill was drafted, there was no facility whatsoever for residents to make a representation to the competent authority. The bill provided that the DAA could go to the competent authority and ask it to assess the situation. The committee agreed with my amendments and put in a provision for residents to be able to do that. However, there was another part to that the decision on whether or not to investigate a complaint rested solely with the competent authority, that they would decide whether or not to conduct an assessment. Now, I don't have a particular problem with that. I know in all instances, and sometimes there will be spurious complaints, if you like, we don't want the authority to have to go through a full investigation. However, what I'm merely providing is that in the event that they decide not to carry out an assessment, they need to inform the person in writing as to the reason of that. Now, the way the Department has drafted these amendments, there's no facility for that bit to go in unless it goes in to the original text, which you've dramatically changed by splitting into two parts. So I want to hear from the Minister that that bit about in writing is going to be resubmitted with 90 and 91 in Shannon's stage. To properly deal with this issue. If it isn't, we have a bigger problem, and I'll come back to that soon. But just in terms of the matters that the Minister spent his most part, clearly the officials got time to write out the speaking note to deal with some of the issues that he wasn't able to deal with when they were actually raised on the floor of the House. But we have a substantial problem, and residents have, with the perceived lack of independence of Fingal County Council being the competent authority. And your responses to us, Minister, haven't been adequate. You kind of got all very blustered there and were saying, well, look, it's all past history. When Fingal's senior official wrote and expressed the concerns, the Attorney-General came back and said there was no conflict of interest. Therefore, the matter is over. But you're patently ignoring what the official actually said, because she didn't just raise an issue of a conflict of interest. She actually raised also that they do not have the requisite competencies available of aviation operations, noise and economic feasibility assessments, and that another independent organisation would be better. Now, this was in November 2017, and on the 30th of January, you announced Fingal as the competent authority. There are no records under FOI, and conveniently the FOI officer is actually on holidays this week, so can't clarify it, but to date, no records have been emerged of any meetings between Fingal County Council and the Transport Department to address those issues that you said were extensively discussed with the three candidates, the other two being the EPA and the CAR. Interestingly enough, there's no information on FOI about any intensive discussions with them either. So could you explain to us how, between November and your announcement in January, all these issues were addressed, particularly when we have, under the correspondence, under FOI, your senior official writing back to Fingal, and this is in May, over 2 weeks after you make the announcement to have Fingal, where the official writes to the Council and says, "Hi Anne-Marie, see the link below. This issue about independence is likely to have prominence," and the link is to a debate that took place on Fingal County Council, where the elected councillors expressed concern about the lack or perceived lack of independence of their council. And the official from your department went on to say that you were, of course, defending robustly. Haven't seen much evidence of that, but anyway, we'll park that bit of thing, whatever. But in the letter it goes on to say, any help you might be able to give around defensive points would be appreciated. For example, as a starting point, I don't know if the proportion of Fingal rates that's claimed by the DAA of 20% is correct. Now, if the senior official dealing with this issue, after the date you announced Fingal as the competent authority, didn't know the level of rate base of Fingal County Council and their reliance from the DAA, and you don't think that's a problem, well then I think there's something seriously wrong with you, to be honest about it, because that is a fundamental problem which actually shows that the independence points around Fingal County Council had not been adequately addressed. And we don't have to rely on just that correspondence. We also have correspondence from the EU itself expressing their concerns about the issues of independence. So for you to turn around and say that everything's okay, the issues were addressed because the Attorney-General says so. The Attorney-General said there isn't a conflict of interest. Well, let's just say we accept that. He said that. Great. He didn't say there was a conflict of interest with the Commission of Aviation Authority either. He didn't say there was a conflict of interest with the EPA. Conflict of interest isn't the only reason why we need to have an expertise and proper base in place for the competent authority. So now we have a really big problem now, actually, because of the manner in which this entire issue has been handled. And in that sense, the matter before us now of the complaints procedure takes on greater prominence. There's a huge problem. When your own government colleague, the chair of the Transport Committee, comes in here and asks questions about letters and this information not being brought before the committee, that is a problem. It's an actually unprecedented problem. The manner in which this bill has been dealt with has been utterly shambolic, to be honest, from start to finish. And in some ways my heart goes out to the officials, actually. I know it's a difficult job, but we have tried to engage, and I fully recognise that we have made improvements to the bill. But if you think by you getting up here and just shouting and roaring and saying, oh yeah, there's no conflict of interest, the Attorney-General is going to address the issues that we've raised, it doesn't. Now, can you please address the issues that deputies across the opposition benches have raised around these points?
Thank you.